Joining us now to talk about online censorship and what can be done to stop it is Parler CEO John Matze. John, thank you very much for joining us tonight. So we live in this time where there's allegations of shadow banning. People have getting their accounts suspended on Twitter, Facebook, all these different platforms, and it seems to be a relatively new phenomenon. What do you think is kind of behind that driving factor there?
Well, it's been a phenomenon that's been coming over the last couple of years, and it built up once the 2016 election happened, and people held these social publications responsible for the 2016 election. And so now we see that there's a lot of outcry from different groups, and these individuals, these companies, are giving in to all of this outcry, and it's a form of cancel culture, really, is what it is. And basically, the louder and the angrier these people get, the more that these companies cave and give into it. And it's totally political. And they'll try to spin it one way or another. And it has a great influence on politics.
And it is that kind of question, too, about whether or not these people are common carriers, as they say, or if they are publishers. And I know that you've spoken on this before. You actually don't like calling platforms such as Twitter or Facebook or those type of companies as social media companies because they kind of do take a different route. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, I like to call them social publications because a publication will take in various entries. People will write things, right? And an editor will review it and they'll decide what they publish. And that's kind of the same way how these platforms are operating. They're saying, hey, you're all allowed to say what you want on here until we don't like it, and then we'll take it down, we'll censor it, we'll get rid of it. They're really trying to curate the news. And the more and more people outcry to them and the more they cave and give in to this pressure by all the loud voices out there saying, censor this person, we don't like their political opinion, the more that it becomes a publication and the less it becomes a social media. And there's no rules by these publications that actually outline what is allowed and not allowed. And so what we did is we created market competition to them, and we have rules based in the Supreme Court and the FCC. And it's clear, and it's really fair. Now, of course, people can't be violent. They can't go crazy. They can't do, ludicrous things. We don't allow pornography and nudity, but you can express your opinion and and it's okay.
Right.
And to your point, there's been a slew of bannings recently, and it's picking up steam more and more, and it's going to continue through this year, and it's only going to get worse.
No, and the example that people always use, too, is we have our First Amendment rights, but you can't go into a movie theater and yell fire for the very reason that...
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, there are limitations to some degree, but I think where this conversation takes place is that a lot of these social media companies, they want to have the best of both worlds. They want to kind of moderate what goes on their platforms, but at the same time, they don't want to take liability for some of the things that are also posted on their platforms, which comes with common carrier protection. Am I wrong?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you're exactly correct. So they want to be able to say whose political opinion can be published. They can censor Rand Paul. They can censor, Zero Henge by removing their media outlet. They can label Mike Pence's video in New Hampshire as sensitive content and scrub that. But at the same time, they're not liable when some, crazy person goes into a synagogue and shoots up a whole lot of people.
Right.
So it's really an awful precedence they've set. They're not liable for anything that they do allow, and yet they can censor people. It's kind of the stuff that I think media outlets really wish they had, like that kind of propaganda authority over the media. It's very fascinating to watch happen.
Absolutely, with the type of protections that they're rewarded for essentially kind of being in this gray area that just doesn't have regulation or laws that really cover it as of right now. But what you're doing at Parler, you're doing things a little bit differently. Of course, your app is kind of a counter type of punch to what's happening on Twitter, kind of the issues that we've been talking about so far. Can you speak about what specifically that you guys at Parler are doing differently that differentiates it from maybe Twitter and Facebook?
Sure. Yeah, our main competitor is Twitter. That's really who we're going after. And we're a free market solution to what is a big problem, right? These tech companies have respective monopolies in their industries. So Twitter, for example, has a monopoly over political speech and political news, as well as events about individuals. Facebook, who owns Instagram and other companies, has a monopoly over what would be seen as kind of the family interaction, the discovery of content and photos. Now, that being said, the way we're doing it differently is we have clear rules that we've linked directly to Supreme Court or FCC initiatives and or rulings. And what we're going to be doing is being very transparent about everything that we do. So when we ban somebody, we will actually say why. And I think that's really fair. We're also working on releasing a database, which could serve as a model to these publications of how they should do it, which will allow you to look up any username and see why, they got points docked on their system. So that's all stuff that we're doing in the future. But today, what we're really doing is we are a solution that doesn't involve legislative involvement, which is going to hurt competition, in my opinion, because the more the government gets involved, the more difficult it's going to be to compete with these monopolies, and the more it's going to ensure that they become permanent monopolies. And so this is really our final attempt to say, hey, everybody, we got to do something about big tech, and now it's in our hands. We can all just join. We can get off these platforms.
I mean, we even hear politicians talking about it today. I mean, some of the leading Democrat candidates are asking for these big tech companies to be broken up. I mean, so competition is at the very least what can be done in order to kind of hold these companies accountable. But once again, for our viewers, the app is called Parler, Parler. You can go check it out. John, thank you very much for joining us tonight.